It was a gift to the sketch writers, the first state visit by a Saudi monarch in 20 years, and it sounded as if Darth Vader himself was on his way to Horse Guards Parade. King Abdullah may not be head of an evil empire, but his visit is mired in controversy. Gordon Brown said last month that human rights are universal, but will he dare say that to the monarch of a country where torture is routine? The think tank is claiming tonight that the kingdom is sending out a message of hate. These books allegedly funded by the Saudis and then distributed to British mosques.
Books stating that homosexuals should be burnt or stoned and thrown from mountaintops, adulterers stoned, contraception described as a plot against Muslim and Arab peoples everywhere.
The Muslim World League is financed by Saudi Arabia to promote Islam. Its director was among those greeting King Abdullah yesterday. He told me his books condemn terrorism and that he doesn't promote extremist views.
It says on page 46, the woman and the man guilty of illegal sexual intercourse flog each of them with 100 strips. I mean, that's pretty extreme, isn't it?
We won't discuss Islamic rulings. If that's what the Quran says, I won't object to it. Whether it's cutting off hands or stoning people, that comes from religious teaching. But we respect what British law says, and we will do whatever it says.
The government said today it was working with mosques to raise standards. But though the king is being treated to a state banquet tonight, several clouds undoubtedly hang over his visit.
Well, we're joined now by Dean Godson, the research director of the Policy Exchange. That's the think tank that published today's report. And we're also joined by the Assistant Secretary General of the Muslim Council of Britain, Inayat Bungawala. First of all, Dean Godson, what persuades you that, that this literature really is extreme, and indeed that Saudi Arabia is behind it?
Well, because it has the mark of the kingdom on it, the Saudi Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Religious Affairs, many of the official Saudi religious establishments. Everything in the report, including the mosques, which are mentioned it, and which are linked to Saudi Arabia, these are claimed on the mosques' own websites.
And how hard do you have to search to find extremism? You have to work overtime?
Not very hard in some cases. In other cases, a little further time, where there is so-called sort of stuff under the counter.
What gives you the greatest concern, for example?
The very things we've been hearing about, the fact that it creates a sense of sectionalism, it creates a sense, a sectarian identity, the belief that Western society, British society, and indeed actually Muslims who don't live up to the puritanical Wahhabite Saudi interpretation of Islam are beyond the pale, and there is a very, very strong coercive element, as you've heard from your reporter there.
Well, Mr. Bungawala, that's exactly what the Saudis believe. It's the Wahhabists in Saudi Arabia, which are the royal family and those who follow that particular brand of Muslim, believe, isn't it?
Well, John, we live in a democratic society, an open society, where we are proud that we allow a whole range of books to be sold, provided that they do not break the law. Now, if Saudi Arabia, which is admittedly a very influential power, lots of oil, lots of money, of course it's going to use some of that money to promote its own official interpretation of Islam. What is the objection? We don't object to anyone publishing their books, as long as it's within the law.
Well, some of it may be on the verge of actually not being,
well,
in terms of well, let's talk about general calls for homosexuals to be thrown from mountains.
No, it hasn't broken the law.
The fact is that it creates a sense of sectarianism. We are desperate in this country for more social cohesion.
Well, I mean,
and it creates an utter sense of
But preaching sectarianism has not been, I mean, heavens, that was going on in Northern Ireland long before
and
we were
know
born.
better than anyone, John, the terrible damage which it caused in Northern Ireland.
But it's not illegal.
It may, in some cases, as we know, there have been prosecutions of people who've spread hate literature. There have been neo-Nazis have been prosecuted for hate literature. We all know it's hard to get the conviction.
If people have...
You would not find this in any place like Westminster Abbey, St Paul's, or other religious institutions.
I am sure if you're going out to look for if you're deliberately going out to look for offensive literature, you will find it in bookshops. We were told...
Well, beheading people who lose the faith, for example.
No.
I mean, not a great idea, is it?
No, these books do not say that in Britain you can behead people. They are giving an ancient ruling about apostasy.
Well, then why is it being reprinted? Why is it being reprinted in a modern context?
It is a historic ruling.
How does it help?
It doesn't matter. Look, the fact is, it's a historic ruling. They're allowed to. If you go to a Jewish bookshop, you'll find ancient Jewish rulings. Are they not allowed to sell those books?
They don't require... But there is nothing in a Jewish bookshop that suggests you should kill people.
You will find passages which tell you that ancient tribes were slaughtered. Men, women and children were slaughtered
in a historical
genocide
context, but this is advocating
similarly,
current.
Well, they do not advocate. They do not advocate. No, they do not advocate in Britain that these laws should be implemented. Absolutely not. All these books emphasize that in Britain you have to obey the law of the land.
It says that women should have subordinate positions and that there are jobs that they should... We've been talking about women's equal pay today.
You don't have to agree with it, Dean. The fact is...
No, we're entitled to point it out, and we're entitled to point out that... We are entitled to point out that it takes place in many of the mosques which are affiliated to yourselves. You could easily say, we will not tolerate this.
In their report,
let me just ask you a slightly different question, because the truth is that many Muslims in this country are actually rather uncomfortable with Wahhabism. It doesn't represent mainstream Islam at all. And in a sense, you accept it in these mosques because you get the money from the Saudis. They back extreme madrasas here and in Pakistan, and it's very difficult to resist that money. And if you can get money and you agree to put books you don't approve of in the bookshop, you get the money.
Well, there are many different interpretations of the faith of Islam, and Britain is no different. We've got over 2 million Muslims here following many different strands of the interpretation of
which
Islam.
Wahhabism would be very, very minor.
Yes, I would agree with you. Bookshops are entitled to sell what books they want. And if they want to sell books from Saudi Arabia, there is nothing in the law that tells them they cannot. In fact, today's report from Policy Exchange contains a very dangerous recommendation. It says that these books should not be allowed to be sold in this country. They should be removed from these bookshops.
Well, we would like them removed.
Well,
I want to know what it contributes to this country.
Well, just wait. That is a very dangerous and slippery slope.
I'm afraid it's a rhetorical question that will have to be answered by email on our website in the normal way.
Recommend the hate literature be removed voluntarily.
Dean Godson, I'm afraid there we must leave it.
Thank you.
Mr. Mangawala.